Good morning. So we're going to give this a shot this morning. We wanted to talk a little bit about our trip to West Virginia and some of the work we did for Appalachia Service Project and a family there that we were working with. We, of course, have everybody up here. We had 7 people go total. So Grace and I were the chaperones. We had Evan, Cade, Kaylee, and Delaney, and then also Kaylee Evans, which is going to pop up on the screen here in a little bit. So you'll get to see her because she's going to present a couple slides. So we put together a slideshow for you today. Each of the teens is going to talk to a couple of the slides and talk about what we did. We haven't practiced this, so please have patience with us this morning. We're also hoping that we won't have any technical difficulties with talking to Kaylee as well. But I think we've got everything sorted out, so hopefully it'll work well this morning. One thing that I forgot was I had the clicker. There we go. So this is what we're going to talk about this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about where we went, where we stayed, so I have some pictures of that, the people we interacted with. Also, we'll be talking about our schedule, so talk about what we did in the morning, talk a little bit about the work site, some of the materials we used and the tools, so we learned some about what tools to use and how to use them. So we'll talk about digging a post hole. We got to dig lots of holes, so we got experience with that. Making an incline for a ramp, as well as putting some decking on. And then we'll talk about, after our project, we came back in the evening, and we would do some things there in the evening, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll kind of wrap it up with some final thoughts. So I think I had one slide before you talk, Grace. I did just want to show where the Appalachia Service Project area is, so it does cover the Appalachia area. You can see the map up there, the different states. Of course, the area there in the center is the area that probably has the most issues with poverty. So that's really where Appalachia Service Project kind of focuses. So in that West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee area, a little bit of North Carolina and Virginia. So those are the areas where they focus. They have little red dots up there, which are actually where the different centers are. So they have about 20 centers spread out across the Appalachia area. They said they have about 15,000 volunteers helping about 300 families every summer. So it's a pretty big effort, pretty big project. We got to be a part of that as we, with respect to where we went. So I'm going to turn it over to Grace and let you talk a little bit.
So we stayed in Craigsville, West Virginia. It's a beautiful wooded rural area in West Virginia, sort of central, as you can see on the map. And it's about 3.5 hours away from Charlottesville. The drive was beautiful, pretty light traffic, so it wasn't too bad at all. The population is 24,600 in Nicholas County, which is where specifically we were working. And around 30% of children fall below the federal poverty level. So that's kind of the heart behind the Appalachian Service Project, is to help address these areas that are more highly impacted by poverty.
Point something out here. There's two routes to go there, right? So when we went, we took the fast route on the interstate, but when we came back, we took the more scenic route. So we kept thinking like, hey, we should be the interstate now, but we had clicked on the other one, so we got a much. It wasn't like it was 10 minutes longer, I guess, but
it was like a back road tour of West Virginia.
Yeah,
it was kind of nice.
Unexpected.
And then the center we were staying at was St. Luke's United Methodist Church. We were staying in the gymnasium area, so we had dividers for both the men and women's resting quarters, and then tables out for our meals, which we would all eat together with the other church that was there. And then we all brought either air mattresses or cots to stay on. It was really fun, like a big slumber party. But it was very, very cold in the gymnasium, which no one was expecting. So there were a few additional Walmart runs that had to be made for that. But overall, it was a wonderful facility to stay in.
So this actually only lists 4 of the 5 people that were on the staff. There was one other that her name was Abby. I'm not sure why it doesn't list her, but the staff was very helpful for everyone. They would often come to the work sites and help out just with whatever was needed. So they were very helpful.
And we had the other 3 churches?
Yeah.
and then we also had, in addition to that, we had the cooks. There was a minister there that was associated with the church, and he came in and did some things. Like he talked a little bit about the area, and we'll get to that here in a minute. And then in the morning?
Yes. So every morning we'd wake up at 7, and then after 15 minutes, we'd all go outside and have a devotional. Of course, they woke us up every morning with music. Some people sometimes paid $5 to request music because there were times when they played annoying music. In fact, the last day, they played video game music on the kazoo to wake us up.
I enjoyed it. I liked the music.
She liked it.
I did.
So it's a good way to get $5 out of everyone to pay money to hear something calmer in the morning, or else you got
Kazoo.
music. What was the one they said was the worst?
Kazoo. Pro-
The zoo was the worst, but for the staff, the last morning there, one of their higher-ranking staff decided to surprise them with goat screaming.
Yes. 10 hours of goats screaming.
So then we had the devotionals. We go outside and have a short devotional. That was kind of how we kicked off our day. And then we would have breakfast. And what would they always ask for breakfast? They would need people to come in.
They would have people come in and serve.
Yeah.
They actually had lemonade because there was one person there who was allergic to red dye. So they couldn't do fruit punch.
All right. So then we would, usually I would go and load up materials. So they would prepare materials for us the night before if they needed to give us something extra for the work site. They had buckets we would go and collect and take them to the van. So I would usually do that before we left while we were eating. And what else do we usually have to make in the morning?
Oh, yes. They also had peanut butter and jelly that we all had to make for lunch.
So we would pack our lunches in the morning to take to the work sites. Okay, Elaine?
Okay, so each project had a code name. So each group, we had a code name. Ours was Sailor Boy. They were based off presidents' pets' names. So basically, each group had a code name just so that everyone, if you had to talk about your project in public or outside of the center, everyone's information stayed private so that nobody got anything shared, just to make sure everyone felt comfortable. We were building a 70-foot ramp for a family that had 4 adopted children, and 2 of them were in wheelchairs. So they needed access to their pool to do some therapy, so that's where the ramp was, from the porch in the back to the pool, so the kids could get there.
Sorry, I'm pulling the slides up on my phone. So there were originally supposed to only be 3 weeks, I think, for ours, but then at the end, once we were so close to finishing, the ASP workers came around to check in on what we were doing. They were like, so really, we need you guys to add 10 more feet on the last day. So they had to bring in another week of people. It was very muddy for the first few days because it had rained really hard. Thankfully, Cade was there, and whenever we would take breaks, he would stay and scrape off the mud off our shoes. It would stick. It was very sticky mud.
We gained 2 inches of the mud on our feet, so we were all walking around that much mud.
It was also very hot. Not as hot as it was here, as I was told. So we're thankful for that, but it was still really hot.
That's fine.
We took lots of naps, especially me. I took lots of naps.
You wouldn't think that was part of it, but we would try to stay hydrated, and if somebody wasn't working, go sit down. While other people were working, we would trade off. And not getting as great a sleep at night, sometimes I was like, hey, if you fall asleep, take your nap, right? When I need you, I'll wake you up and you can come work. So there were a few days we had, where people took some naps. So.
It was definitely nicer to sleep outside where it was warm, considering we had to go to Walmart and I had to buy an extra big comforter. And then finally, I was still a bit cold. That's how cold it was. Comforters didn't work. So yes, the staff did visit. They were very helpful. At some of the groups, they would stay for multiple hours and they would help out and they would help to build things and give us advice.
So what are we playing at the top of the screen? What is that?
Oh, yes. So on one of the staff visits, Stephen, he came over and he wanted to show us a game called rock, paper, scissors, splits. So you would go up to a person and you would play rock, paper, scissors, and every time you lost, you would have to go deeper into the splits. And every time you won, you would be able to lift your foot back up so you wouldn't be in the splits anymore. But the other person who had lost that time would have to go even farther than you did the first time. So it hurt us. It hurt a lot. My legs didn't work after that. I couldn't either. The owners did visit a lot, and we visited them. They were very sweet. At one point, they bought us pizza and donuts. They bought us donuts, lots of donuts. It was very nice. They were baby donuts. So cute. We did have to stay flexible with some of the things that we weren't able to do. I definitely didn't know how to do a lot, so the staff visits really helped. And yeah, the
Can
brain
you talk a
function.
little bit about that? Because I had to call the staff. I had their number on my phone. Because sometimes things would pop up that I'd have to call them and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Do you guys want to come take a look at this? For instance, the homeowner actually had a leach line. You're familiar with the leach line that ran underneath the ramp. So we were trying to plan where the post holes would be dug so they wouldn't be close to the leach line. But however, because of the requirements on how far you put the post holes apart, it started to look like it was going to fall on one of those lines. So we had to call the staff to come in, take a look at it, talk to the homeowner. Then we decided to, actually put post holes on each side of it, far enough away that we didn't think it would be an issue, but it was an issue when we started to dig them. The leach line, the stuff from the leach line, that's sewage, started to come into the holes, so we're like, this isn't going to work. So we had to actually move the holes further away and use larger pieces of lumber. But that is just an example of how, if you've ever done a construction project, it never quite happens like you expect, right? There's always one thing that happens. That was one of the things that slowed us down, is we had to try different things to try to work around that issue. So we eventually got it worked out where we could do it. So that was just one of the examples. So. And then the last thing up there, I have brain function decline through the day. So.
There was one time, thank you for not mentioning this so I can mention it. The owners had lots of dogs. We got to play with them a lot, but there was one point where one of the tiny dogs fell into the sewage hole.
Yes, he had cataracts, and this happened the week before too. They had been digging post holes, and he would come out at night and run around, and they had a video of him in the post hole with his legs sticking out, and the owner had to come over and lift him out. So it happened this week too, where he was out there running around and got into the holes again. And we tried to cover him up, but I don't know, if you have a dog, you understand probably. That doesn't work so well.
I did find out, fortunately, from the owner, it was not the sewage hole. It was one of
thought
the
it was,
clean
like-
holes. So
Yeah.
that was
He still had to be cleaned, but it was one of the other holes. And the brain function would decline for the day. We were at night waking up multiple times because it was so freezing at night. So for you, it was warm. We had one person that thought it was warm. And then just it being hot out, you could tell during the day. By the end of the day, I couldn't speak right. I couldn't speak well. So, and I don't know if you see it up there. Does this work? Do you see that person right there? Well, we're under a tarp trying to stay out of the sun. Delaney came over and laid down and fell asleep. So she slept for like an hour next to these two while they're hammering and putting in joists. So she slept through the hammering and was out, right? So, yeah, so that tells you a little bit. We were tired at times, but still good.
Okay, so the next slide is about the materials and tools we used. We don't have pictures for everyone, but I definitely learned how to use a circular saw, which I didn't know those existed, but it was great.
Did you know that the tiny drills existed?
Yes, I did. Those were cool. But it was a lot of fun to learn about the new materials and the new tools that we could use. I think Delaney definitely enjoyed the drill. You skipped lunch because you were drilling.
It was novel.
It was too fun, but yeah.
Next is Evan talking about digging post holes.
Yeah, I get to talk about all the fun stuff. Post holes. So if you didn't see on the last slide, there was post hole diggers. They were very useful in digging post holes because it's kind of their only purpose. They had to be 2 feet deep, which caused complications when we got near the leach line, because eventually we got so deep that the leach line got in our way, and so that caused the delay and all the problems. They did have to be really wide, so what we did first is we got them to the 2 feet depth, and then we got shovels and carved them out so that they would be the 1.5 feet wide on both sides. Then we had to break a capstone block. I don't know, do we have a picture of that or no? No? Okay. It's like a concrete block that we would have to break in half, and then we put them in the bottom of the post holes so that the actual stands would have a place to rest instead of being on the ground and just stuck and moving a lot.
And I asked them, they said that they weren't allowed, or they didn't allow anyone to use concrete. So I'm assuming they probably set posts before and people poured concrete and then they poured it in the wrong place, and then groups would have to dig them out, I guess, or work with that. So that's my assumption, and that's probably why they did this. They would just take stone blocks, cut them in half, put them in the bottom of the hole. So that way, if we made mistakes, it was easy to fix.
For making an incline, for the ramp, it did have to have an incline so it could actually be a ramp. It wasn't a huge one, I believe 5% decline from the top of the platform. So every so often we would have a platform at a turning point for the ramp so that it would turn evenly and we wouldn't have any weird curves. So what we do is we take from the first, we dig all the post holes first, and then we'd put the staffs in through the post holes, and we'd take a string and we'd tie it from the first post hole all the way to the end, and we'd get a string level to make sure it was level. So we'd mark where the ramp would start and where the ramp would end, and for each foot we went forward, we would drop an inch. So we'd measure how many feet we were going and how many inches we would drop, so we'd know exactly about where we would put it.
And then next is the decking, so we're going to see if, Galen, can you turn on your thing, will it work? Okay, hold on one moment. I got to get the microphone for you. You see that? I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit about the decking?
So the decking is
Can you hear that?
the board that lay across so you can walk on them, and each board has to be inches. And so at the end of the board, there's like these little lines on it. It's either a smiley or a frowny face, and you what's called
Hey, Kaylee, you just went robotic. Try turning off the video and just do audio. Let's see if that helps.
Oh no.
I think she's gone too. Are you there, Kaylee? It was so good earlier too.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Oh, I think we're going to. Hey, Kaylee, I may have to go ahead and do your slides because we're not hearing you very well. It worked so well before when we started. Okay? Can you hear me? This is like technology. Try it one more time, and if not, I'll do them. So you're talking about the decking and how we had to have them the right side up so that it looked like a frown, right? So that the water would run off of them well, so we always had to line them up, right? And then we had to cut with the, what saw was it?
Circular saw.
Right. And then after the circular saw, what did we use?
What?
the jigsaw. So we would use the jigsaw to cut out the notches on there. And then let me go to the next slide for you, Kaylee. Uh-oh. Okay, can you talk a little bit about the evening schedule?
I can try.
You're sounding good right now. So we would come back around 4 o'clock, and what was the first thing we would usually try to do?
So the first thing we would do is shower, and the youth, the youth would go first, because I think we take shorter showers, and then so we had a time limit, and then after the time limit, the adults had theirs. So then the adults would go in, and after everyone showered, we would have, so each team leader would have to check in with a staff member, doesn't matter which one, and we would tell them what we did that day and what we needed and what problems we had if we had any. And after that, at 6 o'clock, we had dinner, and lasted for about an hour. So after dinner, we would have culture night or just some kind of like gathering and talk about what we did today and what some other stuff, just like hang out by either a fire outside or inside, doesn't really matter. And then a few hours later, we would have quiet time where everyone started getting ready for bed, brushing their teeth, putting their pajamas on and all that. And then at 11 or sooner, we would go to bed or just lay there.
All right. Lay there freezing, right? Yes. All right. Thank you, Kaylee. That was awesome. I'm going to put you back down. Okay. So then chores.
Okay, so each team had a chore manager. I was the chore manager for my team. Basically, at the beginning of the week, the chore manager just learned all the chores and then passed it on to their group. So at the top, the white paper is just the days of the week, and then on the side is all our team names. And then the colored papers are the chores for each day of the week. The first one for us was grounds, which is basically just making sure everything is taken care of around the center, like taking out the trash. And then there's this cool magnet thing that you take outside and drag around the parking lot that will pick up any like screws or staples or stuff like that so that it doesn't puncture any tires. The second day was bathrooms. We just sweeped and like wiped down everything. Wednesday was dinner dishes, so we just washed the dishes, wiped down the tables. Thursday we had breakfast dishes, which was the same thing, just in the morning. And then on Friday we had grounds again. So every evening the ASP staff would have us do an evening gathering where we would all gather together, and it would either be a culture night or an evening gathering with a Devo. So on our culture nights, we would watch videos about the culture of the area and the community, specifically about the coal mining in the region and the history behind that, and how they were trying to diversify their community a little bit more to bring in more stable income now that coal mining is a little bit on the decline. And so we learned a lot about what it looks like to live in that area of West Virginia, the history behind the community we were working in. We had a guest speaker, John, come in who would sing folk songs and teach us about his experiences growing up in the area locally. And then another night we did a fire pit around outside where we shared stories, which is a huge part of West Virginian culture, is storytelling, especially throughout generations. So we would share stories, meaningful stories of past ASP experiences or anything fun that happened throughout the week. One of our staff members shared a story of them scouting out locations, which was actually the location we were at. They were driving down this gravel road, and they passed a house they were looking for, and they started going down this really big decline. And they were getting a little worried, but they were like, you know what, we'll turn around, we'll go back up. But each time they would attempt to go up the hill, they did not have enough horsepower in their car, and they would just slide right back down. So they eventually had to try to get in touch with the other center staff who weren't picking up or couldn't access them at the time. So some of the neighbors came out wondering what was going on, and they offered to help. And they eventually, after several tries, were able to pull them out with their truck. And it just went to reflect kind of the culture of the area of sharing with your neighbors and offering that friendly kind of help. And one of my personal favorite sharing was in that area, it was really common to say howdy to your neighbor, to be kind, to share what you have. But instead of saying howdy neighbor like we might hear around here, they would say howdy. So.
And then just have a few final thoughts. We had a great week together. Of course, whenever you go together and just spend all that time together, you usually have great opportunities to bond. And we play games together, the devotionals together. Just kind of had a good time. We certainly learned some building skills. As you heard them talk, some of them the first time they used things, or maybe it had been a while since they used them. So they got opportunities to use the drills, miter saws, and so forth. It was, of course, an opportunity to put Christian love into action. So we got to meet our family there, to know them, to see the kids and talk to them as well, and to kind of work together for something for them. And then also we had other people, we would come back at the end of the day and ask each other, the other groups, how did you do? How did it go today? So we got to kind of share what went on. And we also became a part of a bigger effort. So it wasn't just us building this ramp. There were people that came before us that set us up for success, and we were hopefully setting up the next group for success because they finished it the week after us. So we got pictures on Facebook. We saw the ramp finish, so that was exciting. If you are from West Virginia, you can know that we have been indoctrinated to West Virginia. So every time there was a guitar brought out to sing a song about West Virginia, what was one of the songs that was sung? Yes? Country Roads. So I know the words to Country Roads now, because every time there's a Country Roads, yeah. So we all sang Country Roads at least 2, maybe 3 times during the trip. I have a video, it's just like a minute and a half long. It's kind of their promotional video, just talking about some of the different things they do. I thought I'd show that, if that works, and then we'll take questions.
The number of economically distressed counties in Central Appalachia has actually grown in the last decade. There's around 60 to 100,000 substandard homes. The solution is to fix their homes, to make their homes warm, safe, and dry.
ASP has been in existence for over 50 years, and we have affected a lot of lives.
Without ASP, we'd still be in a broken home.
ASP, they changed our whole life. I mean, they really did. It's amazing what these people do.
I want to help these people. They need a place to stay.
Every group has just been godly people. I just appreciate each one of them more than I know how to say.
I just feel so lucky and blessed that I just want to help people who are not as fortunate as I am.
Helping someone else, getting to know someone else, that's something that stays with you. And that's what I'm going to remember.
I love every one of them, They're God sent. They really are.
ASP just makes faith come alive in very powerful ways.
Promotional material. Thank you. Maybe if anybody has a couple questions.
Can I add one last thing?
Oh, sure.
As a parting gift, ASP had us give the families we worked with a family Bible in which we could make notes and highlight different verses for them. So I thought that was a really cool way of leaving a lasting impact on the family. We're not just here to help them with service, but help them in their relationship with Christ as well. So we were able to note down what specifically we noticed in them that was reflective of Christ, which for our family specifically noticed their heart for their adopted children and how well they cared for them and how much they cared showed them the love of Christ through that.
Do you have any questions about the trip? Anything for us? We had to sleep with them in the cool gymnasium on the air mattresses. Oh yeah, well I had to be under the tarp too. So, but they said they came by and saw that and they're like, one of them said, I've done this for 6 years and I've never seen anyone do this where we threw the tarps over the posts. So when we were working on the decking and all that stuff, we had some shade. So. I believe they do. They have other programs that go. I mean, specifically the one we were part of, which was just like a 6-week thing. And different centers go for different amounts of time. So some of them are 6 weeks, some of them are 8 weeks. And different centers, I think, can hold different amounts of people, can do different projects. But it sounds like they do even building homes, which obviously we weren't a part of. But that's probably, I would say, is the on the other hand. Some of you that talked to the family, how'd they feel about the ramp?
They were super gracious about everything. I know the mom in this situation was super sweet. She always came to check on us and see how things were going, and they were just really grateful for everything, and they just radiated positivity to everyone who was there. So yeah.
Anybody else want to say?
While we were there, as you can see in the top left corner, we made lots of friends. There were about 3 other groups there with us, so we made up, I think, 30 people, was it? Like, exactly? I think it might have been 26. But we made lots of friends, and it was very fun.
And then again, for the family, the owner, the father, was a little surprised about how large the ramp had to be because of regulations, but he was very flexible in working with us, and he was, at the end, told us that he was so grateful for whatever we could provide, and that at the end, when they said we needed to add a little bit extra footing to the end of the ramp, it was a little bit discouraging, but he ultimately said he was so grateful for the ability to get his kids to the pool, to do the water therapy with them, and then to show us even some more love, he brought out some shoes that they were going to donate to the family and offered them to us, which was a really sweet gift as well.
Questions? Yeah. The board. How were the boards put down?
They were screwed down.
They were screwed down. Yeah. Yeah. So one more question, then I think Clark wants to read a note we got, and then we'll be done. Any other questions? What do you think? Are we ready to build ramps professionally, or do we need a little more practice? We're pros. Okay, Grace says we're pros. So, yeah. All right, well, I will turn it over to Clark and let him close us out.
Thanks. I recall before you went, Larry had the questionnaire, what is the skill set of the group? And they had all these things listed. It's like, well, we're willing to learn.
I think we were zeros on most of it. Insulation, roofing, we could dig holes, put down, do that.
But next year, it's going to be a different questionnaire. We got a thank you note just the other day. Dear Larry and Rugby Avenue Church of Christ, thank you so much for an amazing week. We are so appreciative of the great work you guys accomplished this week and the great relationships you built with the Adaires. I guess that was the family. We know they will appreciate it forever. Thank you so much again, and we hope to see you next summer. Sincerely, Molly, Stephen, Emily, and Kiara. And I just wanted to add a couple of thoughts before we go, is that, in our mission statement at Rugby Avenue, we're centered around the 2 great commandments, and that's why we have the phrase that we're going to show God's love to those around us. And this group did that. And that's interesting because the youth of this congregation are fulfilling the mission of the congregation. They're not waiting until they're adults. They're fulfilling the mission of our family right now. And also, I'd like you all to think about the fact that in a sense you're leaders, because one way leaders lead is by example. Leaders set an example and inspire, and that's what you all have done for this congregation. I think this has been very inspiring, and I think it's a great example to the rest of us. And finally, what that all adds up to is that these teens are a very important part of this congregation. And on behalf of the elders, I would like to extend our appreciation for what you've done. And I'd like to thank Larry and Grace for leading the trip out there. I suppose this was the first service trip for everybody here, right? And from what I heard coming back, everybody's wanting to do it again sometime, right? So we hope you do it again next year. So let's just...
One of the best comments that I heard out of the whole thing was Larry was talking one night. He called me and he was talking about how Delaney was so excited she wanted to come back next year. And my favorite comment is that she said, now I can talk about tools with my grandpa. Jim might not want to. Now she can talk to him about tools.
Maybe you can give him some tips.
Tell him exactly what he's doing wrong.
Now, Jim's got a pretty good skill set for that questionnaire. You know. Anyway, let's close with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, holy is your name. We are so thankful, Lord, for the opportunity to serve you, and we're so thankful that these young people seized that opportunity and glorified you, that they showed your love to others. Help us all to follow their example and to appreciate what they have done. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you all.